competition season. We are 1 week out from Saturday. I am really, really feeling it. Today was a high carb day, so okay, he's back on the show. We're going to start this over. So that's much better, Edwin.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, great. So we're going to do this again. Do you need to put your phone down, stabilize it? You don't have to hold it the whole time.
Sure. There we go.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So let's go ahead and start this again. I'll just clip that out once we are finished the show. So everybody, this is Victor from Cyborg for Life, and I want to welcome you to episode 161 of Limb Lengthening Live, where the patients interview the guests. And today we have a very special guest on the show. We have Edwin. He is a cosmetic limb lengthening patient who did his femurs and just completed his lengthening. He finished 7.2 centimeters, and he's here to share his experience with you all and answer some brief questions at the end. Edwin, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, Victor. Thanks.
Absolutely. So Edwin, take me back. I want to know why you wanted to get, cosmetic limb lengthening done in the first place.
Sure. So I was 5'5", let's call it, rounding up a little bit to 5'5". I think like most people in that area of stature, there can be times in your life, either frequently or at least once in a while, where height impacts your happiness to some degree. And I think that's my story. I mean, I've been fairly successful in my life. I've kind of, I guess you'd say I've overcome my height to a lot of extent during my, my childhood, growing up and becoming an adult. But, I think I just got to the point where I knew that my height was a limiting factor in my happiness, overall happiness. And I just wanted to try to do something about it. You only have, YOLO, you only live once. So I thought, if I want to be my most happy, it's up to me. And I identified that, and I've tried other things. Like most people, you pretend like it's not there. You might wear lifts, you might do other things, you might work out, to make your body as good as it can be. And I think that's my story right there.
That's incredible. Yeah, like you said, you lived a fully, amazing life. You're very successful. You're in good shape. You did all these things, and you just felt like, hey, I want to just improve this one attribute to maximize my life, and you did that. Now, I want to kind of know, like, how did you find out about this surgery? Because it's kind of like, I guess in the last 2 years, it became more popular, but before that, it was kind of like unheard of. So, how did you really find out about it?
Gosh, I'll have to think back, Victor, because I had my surgery done at, we can say what clinic we went to, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I had my surgery done with Dr. Paley and Dr. Robbins. I went to visit them actually 7 years ago. So at that time, I must have gotten it off the internet somehow. I must have heard of their clinic. At that time, I also visited one other clinic in the Hollywood area, and but back then I think it was just I must have seen something on internet or Googled about height lengthening, or I can't remember what the term was back then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
More recently, as I moved on to, really consider getting this done, you come up when that happens. And I definitely want to let people know that, talking to you a couple times before the surgery was as big a help as anything I did to prepare. So, I'm gonna give you some kudos or a shout out for your knowledge and your approach to limb lengthening is invaluable. So
thank you. I appreciate that, Evan. I really do. So let's talk a little bit about the surgery. I mean, this surgery, it's very simple. They break your legs, you put a nail inside of them, you lengthen it over the course of a few months, and then you let it heal and you're taller. But there's a lot that goes into it. So let's talk about your process. What was the surgery kind of like day leading up to the surgery day, and then like what was surgery like, and then like what was your experience like about pain and everything like that?
Yeah, I want to point out that the surgery is no joke. I consider myself to be a somewhat mentally tough person, and I'm no Marine, but I can handle some pain. it's been it's been the most challenging thing I've gone through.
Wow.
So I want to point that out. I would do it again, but for sure, there are times during, the process where you go, wow, really? Did I chose to do this? So it's serious, but I'm already seeing some of the benefits, and I'm not even close to being fully recovered.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, like all things in life, it's pros and cons, and I can already see that this is going to be a very beneficial thing when this is all done. But getting through it is, it's a journey and a task.
Yeah. So I know that we talked before your surgery, but like, were you worried when you were actually, like, let's say, getting the pre-op done and you knew that tomorrow I'm not going to be able to walk?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're laying there. I remember specifically my niece came with me to help the first few weeks. That morning, laying in the surgery bed, that's when you say it's time. It's time to change. But that can also be a time to say I'm not ready. So I had all those thoughts. I think I had every thought in the book, but by that time I was fully, I thought, mentally and physically committed, and I was ready to make the change. Yeah.
That's incredible.
When you ask yourself why you're doing the surgery, you might ask yourself that temporarily, but then when you think about it, you know exactly why you're there, to have the surgery, and so you get it done.
Absolutely. So you push through with the perseverance and that mindset. Now, Edwin, if you don't mind, like, what age range are you in? If you don't mind saying, like, how old you are, because I know that people who get this done, they always feel like, it's better to get it done earlier than later, and if you don't, it's like, is it too late to get it done? But obviously, you got it done, and the process seemed to go really well for you. And I think that, for prospective patients listening, and let's say an older age category, this could be really valuable to hear.
Yeah. So I'm 56. I think probably I think it's probably better to have it earlier.
Yeah.
So as far as the things that I went through, I think I had everything. I think I literally had everything, that you can have during the surgery. For example, like my surgery pain, they typically say that your surgery pain will be kind of intense for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was that I had fairly significant surgery pain, and then there's usually a honeymoon phase where your surgery pain ends and your lengthening pain starts.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped right from surgery pain. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days, and I had the onset of nerve numbness, nerve pain. So I was just like, oh well, here we go. My honeymoon was 3 days long, but you just deal with each one of those hurdles as it comes,
Mm-hmm.
and you just you're gonna make it. It's gonna end. So they had me, to give you a little more specific. So my surgery was on the 19th of February. Sorry. I started lengthening at 3 turns a day because of my age. So Dr. Robbins had me lengthen, I think it was for 2 weeks. It was in between the visits with Dr. Robbins. I lengthened three turns a day, which is, as your audience probably knows, 1/4 of a millimeter turn per extension per turn. So things were going pretty well. I was dealing with the nerve pain. They put me on some gabapentin. So I was off to the races, I thought. I went back for my second visit with Dr. Robbins, and everything seemed fine. I was enduring the nerve pain, and I went to 4 turns a day, and I was able to do that for about 2 weeks. But my body did not react well to 4 turns for some reason. I could do pretty well at 3. As soon as I went to 4, I would get my range of motion the next morning would be baked, pretty much 0.
Right.
So I just thought, I'll probably need to extend my time a little bit. I'm gonna do 3 turns, And I did not have a set. I kind of in my mind had a set goal that I wanted to get into the 70s. But I just took it a day at a time, and I thought I'll just take what God gives me as far as lengthening. So I had to lengthen a little bit longer due to that 3 turns a day. But I finally got to 72, and it was a Friday, and I was happy right there. And I turned my remote control back in at my last visit, took a picture with Dr. Robbins, and flew back home.
That's incredible. So 72 millimeters, what was so special about that number that you wanted to stop there and not go for the full length of the nail?
Yeah, a couple things. I'm such a numbers geek. So I thought being into the 70s when you could, I always looked at that 80 as like, that's it. That's the gold standard. I from the beginning, I didn't know if my body would let me go that, at my age, let me go that far. So I wanted to get into the 70s. I really didn't want to go to 75 because I think that would have made me slightly taller than my son. And my son is absolutely fine with his height, and he's got none of the issues that I had with mine growing up. And I didn't want, your son should be taller than you. I wanted to give that to him. So I stopped at, I'm about 5'7.5" now, and I think my son is like somewhere around 5'7 3/4. So all those factors, and plus I think I was mentally ready when I got to 72. I'm like, and that's 90%. I got into the A's on a bell curve. So
yeah,
there you go.
That's awesome. I like that. Give it to your son and just stop a little short. But you got to understand that 72 is still like a clean 3 inches. That's huge. That's big. So you said you started out at what? You said 5'5"?
I was about 5'4 3/4 to be exact.
Got it. Yeah. All right. And then now 3 inches tall. That's pretty much, give or take, like close to 5'8", barefoot, and with shoes well over 5'8". Have you obviously you're still recovering, you just stopped lengthening last Friday, so you're not able to walk yet, but like you can stand up on the walker and stuff, and like when you do that, do you notice the height increase?
Absolutely. You might pull a credit card out and think that's is that going to make a difference? It's noticeable. I noticed being taller at 1 inch, literally. When I was standing up for my rehab and therapy and doing my exercises, you can kind of tell. Yeah. And I don't think it's fully set in because I'm not up walking around the world. I'm not participating in the world yet at my new height. But, my sisters are, I flew to my hometown, and, one of my sisters was taller than me before.
I think I'm getting a little bit of feedback on your mic, Edwin. Can you click off and come right back on? I'll stay here. I think it's just like kind of giving a little bit of static. It might be on that end. I hope it's not my end. I'm not sure. If anybody in the chat hears that, 3 inches of new height to yourself. So you're going to be pretty much average height with shoes on, and it's going to be amazing. And you can already feel the difference. Now I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit. What did you kind of learn along the way of lengthening that you can kind of share with people listening right now who may be considering this surgery for themselves?
Yeah. So I learned that you cannot stretch too much to get ready for this surgery. I would say that the number one thing I did that helped me get to where I was stretching. And there were times where I wish I had, stretched, more leading up. My hip flexors specifically, that's where I felt when I would lengthen and I would get lengthening pain, I felt it right in my hip flexor area. My hamstrings weren't too bad. I'm not sure which muscle or which nerve, system, causes the nerve pain that I had. And it was pretty consistent. When I say nerve pain, I was numb basically from about middle of my upper knee to my ankle on the inside of both legs. So stretching might have helped that, but just a word of advice: if you can stretch and get some strength in your upper body, because you're relying a lot on your upper body for mobility once your legs are broken.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Okay, so stretch as much as possible, train your upper body, your core, so you can mobilize on the walker or whatnot. What about any of the pain, I guess, management? So you said that stretching is good to kind of help with like the muscle tightness and whatnot. But what about early on when the patients are going through that pain phase after the surgery?
Yeah. So in my case, and I would think it's the same in most of the cases, because it was similar to some other people that I talked to, being in an Airbnb for the first 4 weeks. Then when I was in the hotel, I had access to other patients. But as far as pain management, in my instance, they usually send you home from the hospital with a dose of, some pretty high potency opioids. When it comes to pain management, my advice is that take your meds as best you can to stay ahead of the pain. Because if you think you're feeling great and you're worried about taking opioids and you back off, once the pain rolls, so stay on top of your protocol for taking your meds, and don't miss.
Okay.
Because if you think bad with the meds, you can.
Yeah, I think it is getting a little choppy now. It was getting a little choppy there for a second, Edwin. So what I'm going to ask, see if you can turn off your camera and see if it saves some bandwidth. I think that's what one. Let's see if that's better. All right, is that any better, Edwin? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Yes.
All right, let's do it like that. Sometimes it saves some bandwidth, I guess. That's what these tech geeks say. So, all right, let's proceed like this. I'm sorry. I appreciate you showing your face. It really does help, but I don't want to ruin the audio. All right, so yeah, no, definitely. I think that so far the tips that you've given to these patients are basically stretch as much as possible, stay ahead of the pain, stay ahead of it with your pain pills and whatnot. Strengthen your upper body, your core, so you can mobilize really well. What else can you tell them towards the end of lengthening when you're seeing that you want to go to, let's say, 7 centimeters or 8 centimeters and you're only at 5 and things are getting really challenging? What type of mental resilience do you have to have then? Is it just focus on your why and motivate yourself, or is there other little things you can do to push yourself along?
You describe it precisely. I mean, for me, that the last 15 millimeters was definitely more difficult than the first 15, and I would imagine that happens to most patients. Your soft tissue and your whole lower body is just getting stretched. So at that point, I think it's really important at that time to know where you want to go, and kind of you just need to buckle down. And it's a once in a life. The way I looked at it, this is my chance. It's once in a lifetime. Once I turn the machine back in and I decide I'm done, that's all I get. Unless I want to go through this again. And at this point, I don't. I mean, I knew that for me, at least right now, there is no second surgery. There's no tibia surgery for me. So you just need to buckle down and say, I've got a goal. I'm going to get there. Because there are days when you, at that end, especially those during those last 10 millimeters, that you want to quit. You want it to be done. You're tired of aching and feeling quite poorly and not sleeping well, and that all has physical and mental impacts on you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Edwin, I really want to kind of talk about your bone healing, because I think that sometimes the main goal of this, right, is it's all about bones, right? We break the bones, we lengthen the bones, and we want the bones to heal so we can get back to our normal life and walk. So what was your bone checkups like with Dr. Robbins when you were going in and seeing them? Was he saying, hey, Edwin, you have really good bone regenerate, you're right on, the average timeline to look like you would be fine to leave and go back home, or did it have a slower regenerate? Like, talk about that.
So from my first visit back, when they took the first x-ray, from day one, Dr. Robbins said that I had good bone growth.
Okay.
And Victor, I think I sent you one of my photos, and as an average person, you can't tell what you wouldn't even know that's bone from a strawberry shake in there. So for me, he didn't compare me to anybody, and I don't know, how I compared to a 26-year-old. But he said your bone growth is great. So that was never a negative part of my thing. With every subsequent x-ray they took, he kept reiterating that I was lucky enough to have good bone growth.
That's incredible. And what type of physical therapy did you do? Was it just the manual stretching, or did you do other modalities? Like, let's say, I know that they have a pool down there, anti-gravity treadmill. They have, they do different types of, manual massage therapy. What types of physical therapy did you do that really helped break up that tightness, that stiffness, to kind of get you to, that 72 millimeters? Yeah.
So again, I did my surgery and physical therapy at the Paley Institute. So for me, that usually means that you rotate through about 3 or 4 physical therapists. I didn't ask to be assigned one person every day. I thought that they would get bored of me, and I might get bored of them. And there's those different therapists. They're all fantastic. I mean, it was one of the best parts of going to Paley is that I think their physical therapy program is like.
I really wish that we can get him back. All right, here he is. Edwin, you're back.
Victor, I apologize.
No, you're good. Oh, wait.
If this is my connection, my apologies.
That's okay. We're going to deal with it. I just, so basically I want to kind of like ask you one more question, and that is, if you have any final words of advice for people who are, one, looking to get femur lengthening done in general, like, cosmetic limb lengthening, what types of tips can you give them? And two, it's like for the guys in the older age category, right? Like you said, you're 56. I think that is super unique, because a lot of people fear that they're too old after the age of 45 to get this done. You just went through it, you blew through it, and you're doing extremely well. So if you can answer those 2 questions before we wrap up, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, I'll start with the age thing first. I wish I had done it earlier now in retrospect, but I'm glad I did it. So I guess that's the thing, is that I would probably do it again. I would definitely do it again at my age. Height or their height, they can't help but have their height impact them. I don't think there's an age gap. So, if you want to do it, do it. But if you're going to do it, be prepared for a journey, and it's going to be hard. That's my advice. It's not undoable, and you can make it, but you have to be mentally ready for some challenges.
Absolutely. And so would you say that for patients who are thinking about this right now, I know your main, overarching theme here is like, hey, if you really want to get this done, just go for it. But people are fearful of the pain. They're fearful of, like, let's say their bones not healing, not being able to recover. Well, you just finished lengthening and you're not able to walk yet, but are you optimistic about the future? Are you able, to be able to walk and everything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And my advice, Victor, on that note would be to everybody else, that is the safest that you can afford. Okay. And if you can um, I put safety absolutely at the top of my list. So I probably went to the most expensive place you can get this done. But I can tell you that, and some people might not be able to get there, but go save as much as the safe for the project, the process will be. I was talking about how difficult the surgery is at the Paley Institute, and I don't want to keep giving Paley props because I know there's lots of other places, but that's my experience. Victor, I never once was worried that something was going wrong with my legs. I mean, they might have hurt like hell, but there was never a day where I thought, oh my God, is this not right? Is something not right happening? Because they are so, they are the world class. And that it shows, and it shows whether I'm going to be safe through this or whether I'm going to have a negative impact. And I fully expect, not this next coming winter, but the winter after that, I'm going skiing. I mean, I know it, and I know I'm going to be able to maybe run, as fast as I did the day before I went into surgery. So I've got no worries about where I'm going to be. It just takes my effort to get there. That's all.
Absolutely. That's incredible, Edwin. I really agree with you on that last point. I've been talking to a lot of patients lately, and they've been, asking about these random questionable clinics. Hey, what about this surgeon? What about this surgeon? Oh, I looked at his website and this, that, and the other, and I'm like, it doesn't really prove a whole lot. And then you hear from these patients, 6-7 months later, and they're like, I've gotten deformities and all these malpractice suits and whatnot. And you're right. Save as much as you possibly can, or don't do it, because it's like safety is paramount with this procedure. It's no joke. And Edwin, now you are perfectly fine. Once you heal up, you will get back to those activities, and it's very transformative to be able to kind of go with a thought and turn it into a thing, because you paid your dues. You went through the process, and here you are. So thank you, Edwin, for coming on and sharing your experience. I apologize about the connection issues, but I think that I could probably go back and clip out some of the parts to make a nice cohesive episode. So if anybody in the chat has questions for Edwin, he's a femur patient in his later 50s, and he just did 3 inches on his femurs. And if you guys have any questions for him, just go ahead and post them in the chat now. If not, you can post them in the comments, and I'll make sure that he gets them through email, and I can comment back, something like that, so we can make sure you get your answers, for the questions. So, all right, yeah, DJ Cyborg, thanks for the talk, Edwin. I think that we are good on this end. So, Edwin, I think that what we'll do, I'd love to have you back on the show to do a follow-up episode, sometime this summer, maybe, with other patients. We could do like a round table and have you join if you're available, because I think it's super incredible that you just finished lengthening. I'd love to see you in a month or two, or even maybe before then, whenever you want, to kind of see how you're progressing in terms of the consolidation phase, because that's a big, important gray area that a lot of patients are discharged from, the clinics, but then they're like, what now? What next, right? And I think that we can fill that gap by hearing patient stories. So if you'd be open to it, I'd love to have you back.
I'd be glad to, Victor. I'd be glad to help with any information that you think would help the audience.
Awesome.
So any way I can help people that are thinking about having this done, I'm all for it.
All right. So there's a few questions in here for you, Edwin. This first one here from Nathan, he's asking, have you tried taking any peptides for faster healing, like BPC 157 or TV 500?
No. The simple answer is no. And the reasoning for that is that Dr. Robbins and Dr. Paley didn't prescribe that or suggest that. And again, I think that they're at the top of the food chain as this goes. And if I needed something or something would have benefited me, they would have suggested it to me. So either I didn't need it based on what they saw from the very beginning, or it wasn't appropriate for me. And I trust them literally, almost implicitly, They were doing the best for me they could. And if there was something out there that would have helped me, they would have suggested it and I would have done it. But no, I did not take any peptides.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that actually it was one of Dr. Robbins' I guess colleagues who came on. He was an ER doc. It was, I think it was like last summer or something, and he actually talked about peptides. But Dr. Robbins just refers patients to him to talk to him because he's no expert. This guy is. So, but I think it's kind of relatively new, and some patients have said that it works, and others are kind of still dabbling with it. But we'll kind of get the consensus soon enough. All right. Let's see. This question here from Arlo: do you need a caretaker first few weeks after surgery?
You don't. It's not mandatory, but it's if you can have that, if you can make that happen, I would definitely suggest it. So, like I said, my niece came down. I was lucky enough to have a niece that thinks highly enough of me to put a month of her life away to come help me with this. It was tremendously helpful, especially with that transition out of the hospital and the surgery pain. So if possible, yes, but I know that's not available to everybody. You can make it through without it. It's just whether it's a little more uphill battle or make it a little easier on yourself.
All right. This next one here from Wolverine Rogue 1980 saying, hey, I'm 5'5". I wish I was taller. Is limb lengthening worth it?
Wolverine, if you're listening to this podcast, then it's important. It's that important to you, being 5'5", as it was to me. 3 inches can make a big difference. You know, I'm not misperceived to think that I'm tall now, but I just wanted to be not the shortest person in the room anymore. You know, so I don't got no misconceptions that 5'7" makes me a tall person. But I can tell you what, Wolverine, I feel tall. You know, I feel a difference, and it's a meaningful difference. So yes, I spend a lot of time and money, and it's worth it.
That's awesome. I like what you just said right there. Hey, I'm not tall, but I feel taller. It's a meaningful difference. I think that's so powerful what you said, because a lot of people who are getting this done, they're well below average height, 5'2", 5'3", 5'5", and when they get it done, they become close to average, maybe still below average, but it's a difference to them and to their world and their perspective. And I think that's so powerful about this procedure, because people are like, oh, you're still short in the overall scheme of things. It doesn't matter to you as long as you feel better about yourself. That's what this is all about, and I think you just proved that. So I love what you said.
Victor, you should not do this to change what other people's perspective of you is. This is all about my own vision of myself. If no one else out there ever says that I'm, notices a difference, I could care less. And you shouldn't. You should have it in your mind, because you can't tie your happiness with the outcome on what you think the rest of the world is going to treat you like. Yeah. This is all about me, and this is about my perspective of myself. And 3 inches can make a big difference in how you see yourself. And that is my goal. And I would caution anybody that thinks that this is all about how the outside world sees them. It doesn't matter. This is about how you see yourself.
Wow, I got to make sure I soundbite that right there and turn that into a YouTube short. That was just a money statement. I love it. That was awesome, Edwin. All right, let's see here. Any other questions? How much was everything? You can answer that if you want from Nathan. But Nathan, I think they have their prices posted on their site. I have used. Okay, so Vita's saying I have used these.
Victor, I can answer that question.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the surgery price is posted. You can easily find that. But my all-in cost, when I add in direct surgery costs, that means transportation to and from, I spend $126,000 to get that 3 inches. Okay. That's lodging, that's transportation, that's anything that I had to pay to get through those 100 days in Florida.
That's actually very helpful, because we always hear about what the price is for the surgery and what they include, but we don't hear about the overall cost. So actually, I think that was a super valuable question. Thank you, Nathan, for asking that. All right, and thank you, Edwin, for answering. Vita X Machina saying, I have used these peptides not for lengthening but for soft tissue injuries, and I've had great results. So that's promising. All right. Well, thank you so much, Vita, for saying that. All right. Well, guys, I think if you don't have any other questions for Edwin, oh, here we go. This question from RY. How many weeks after surgery can you walk assisted or not? Okay, so that's a good question because he's still assisted. So Edwin, yeah, you want to answer that? You're still using the walker?
Yep, I'm still using the walker. So that was my last exit question that I had for Dr. Robbins, is when he thought I might be able to walk unassisted. So his comment was 8 to 12 weeks. So that's the expectation he set with me. I'm doing everything I can, getting good sleep, eating a lot of protein, I'm still continuing to do physical therapy outpatient now. And I hope to be closer to the 8 week, but if it's 12, you can only walk. I certainly don't want to bend my rods and have to go get, a surgery to lengthen this process. No pun intended. Yeah, so that's my expectation, is hopefully within another 6 weeks then, which would put me at 8 post lengthening. I hope to report back that I'm able to walk without assistance. But if I need to walk with assistance for another 4, you just do that. You walk until your bone is ready, and then you use assistance until your bone is ready. That's
well said. And honestly, I hope you're closer to the 8 week mark too, because that'd be incredible. Yeah, that's great. That is great. Well, thank you, Edwin, for coming on and sharing your experience. It's super valuable to hear it from as many patients as possible. Because like I said, oh, here we go. Wolverine is asking, how tall were you before the surgery, Edwin? I don't think he heard earlier. He might have joined late.
Wolverine, I was 5'4" 3/4 inches tall.
So just about your height, Wolverine. Pun intended, because I think the real Wolverine was about 5'5". I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. All right, guys. Let's see. Any last questions for Edwin while we have him here? He will be back, and we will monitor his progress throughout consolidation. I think that's super valuable to have him being willing to come back. So, but yeah, Edwin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience. Thank you guys in the chat for asking questions. I really appreciate it. This is the platform that we're really kind of changing this industry of limb lengthening, especially for stature. It was kind of like this redheaded stepchild of orthopedics, and we're kind of giving it a better reputation thanks to everybody here. So thank you. Wolverine is saying, good luck and be safe to you, Edwin. So that's awesome. All right, guys. So yeah, so for episode 161 of Limb Lengthening Live, this is Victor from Cyborg Life signing out, and the amazing Edwin. We'll have him back on the show next time. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Peace. Have a good one. Bye.